Jim Harbaugh and Joe Hortiz vigorously defended their star quarterback in their end-of-season press conference because they know that they didn't do enough to put enough around him this season, but they are very optimistic about version 2.0.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen, and make sure that you never miss the show. Go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, there's been a lot of haters about Justin Herbert and his performance in the playoff game, some well-founded and a lot not. And Jim Harbaugh and GM Joe Hortiz made it a point to defend Justin Herbert and say that they need to take on more of the responsibility of getting Justin Herbert what he needs. And one of the things that's going to benefit Justin Herbert is some continuity with the coaching staff. Justin Herbert has had to learn 4 different offenses in 5 years, so having some continuity is only going to be a good thing. And this year, the Chargers have a much more compelling sales pitch than they had last year.
Yeah, they do. I mean, the fact that they got as many guys to buy into the division last year, $60 million over the cap coming off a 5-12 season is crazy. But next year, I feel like they have a much, much better sales pitch. But this Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the app. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. And David, we didn't know we were going to get a press conference from Jim Harbaugh and Joe Hortiz, and they went on for 45 minutes. But one of the main kind of things that came up very early in it was just Justin Herbert and the criticisms that he faced, especially after the heartbreaking loss. And I think when you think of how the season ended for the Chargers, you would really be pleasantly surprised, I think, how optimistic and positive this press conference came off, just about the optimism of the future and what they're building here. I think they all went kind of further than they expected to go if you ask them in a private moment. But I do think that it was very interesting to hear their comments on Justin Herbert specifically, especially just kind of taking on the chin why he's getting the criticism and basically saying it's because they didn't do enough for him. And this was Jim Harbaugh's exact quote. "We did him a disservice, didn't put him in the position to be successful," and also called every criticism of Justin Herbert, or most of the criticism, completely unfair, which is exactly what you want your head coach to be saying about your star quarterback. When everyone's doubting him, they're all doubling down on number 10.
Well, that's what great leaders do. Great leaders, they take on that responsibility. They shield their people from the storm from above, and the criticism from other people. They're the ones that absorb that, and they are the shield for their players. And that's what Jim Harbaugh and Joe Hortiz did with these comments. They said, hey, Justin Herbert fought through a ton of adversity and went out there and played fantastic football for the majority of the season. And they said, hey, we did what we could to give him what we had the resources to be able to provide to him, but we were not able to do enough. And that's just the mark of good leadership. And I am very confident in this leadership team going forward that they are going to do what they say they're going to do, which is to continue to build the team around Justin Herbert. You improve the pieces around Justin Herbert, then you're going to get a better version of Justin Herbert.
And that's what Joe Hortiz said. He said, I think with Justin and all the players, you want to support Justin the best we can. That's adding, building around him. You can support him in so many ways. And to help him, you can help him with defense. You can help him with offense, offensive line, weapons, everything. Obviously, they're not going to give away what the game plan is or what they could be potentially targeting in the first round. But it's true. Build a better team around Justin Herbert because, as you saw in the playoff game, offensively and defensively, the Chargers didn't have the team that could get it done in that part of the season or the postseason, how it ended up. But I did also like that Joe Hortiz went to kind of dispelling the notion, that Justin Herbert's kind of playoff story was written, right? He said, We're going to set a narrative of Justin Herbert off 2 playoff games. That's absurd. What I watched this guy do, he's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal competitor, leader, playmaker. We'll roll with him. They're going to roll me out of here before they roll him out of here. I can promise you that. He's special, and special things are ahead for him. Book it. That's what you want him to say, and you also want him to take the accountability and talk about what they have to give him for him to be special and to achieve those special things. I also thought it was hilarious that Jim Harbaugh basically brought up the Barstool Big Cat comments about just basically saying, hey, if you're selling Justin Herbert stock, I'm going to buy all of that, because if it's cheap right now, get in on the ground floor because bigger things are coming. But I do think that it's important, as I said, for them to be backing up their quarterback publicly, especially as you have all of these fans saying all these crazy things and potentially, hey, is Justin Herbert the guy? Should they get rid of him? There's no equivocation in that building, right? Everyone knows what you have to do, and that's build as good of a team around this quarterback as you can, because he's the one that's going to potentially get you to the promised land. And let's make everyone around Justin Herbert better and show the recognition that we didn't give him enough and we need to add more.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Herbert threw 3 interceptions during the regular season last year. Like, that is historically great. I mean, he was amongst the names like Tom Brady, you know, who had one of the best seasons of all time, you know, as far as efficiency numbers. Justin Herbert was in that same conversation. So, I mean, how quick do people forget, you know, how he performed and how all the injuries that he had to fight through to be able to go out there and continue to give his team the best possibility to win. And that was with a roster that was banking on a lot of guys to come through that were on kind of prove it deals. And, you know, a lot of them did come through. Some of them did not. But Justin Herbert was definitely not the reason why the Chargers completely faltered in that playoff game. Did he have a poor performance? Yeah, he had a poor performance. But he also didn't have an offensive line that opened up any holes for him, didn't protect him very well, and didn't have a defense that could get him stops when he needed to get those stops. They played pretty well for the majority of the year, but when the lights were on bright and the stage was the biggest, they weren't able to answer the call. And that's because this is still a team that is progressing and building and still needs to continue to be built before they get to the promised land.
I think it's, you know, what you would call a competitive rebuild, right? And you just asked about if, you know, making the playoffs and having them lose the way that they did. If you put any more stock into that when you're trying to, you know, decide what you need to add to this team, and they said they didn't, and it's the entire season. And I agree with them from the standpoint of saying, you know, hey, there's other good teams we lost to, and you have to take stock in all of those as well. And that I completely agree with. But I do think that it's like, hey, look, you saw what the gap is. And honestly, as much as it's important what they said in this press conference, I think it's as important what they didn't say. And I think what they're not saying to you is, holy bleep, look what this dude was able to carry this roster to, right? Like Daniel Jeremiah brought up, I think on Rich Eisen's show, basically he was talking to Joe Hortiz in the flight back from the Texans game, basically telling Joe Hortiz, this is the worst offense that Justin Herbert's ever going to have. Didn't say what Joe Hortiz said back to that, but I think it tells you what the conversation was revolving around.
Watch,
you know?
what I do.
I don't know what, you know, I'm guessing it's not, you know, Joe Hortiz sitting there in silence. So I think that they know exactly what they need to do. And I think they're saying to themselves, okay, everyone can doubt him right now, but when we give him what we plan to give him, that is when the special things start to get achieved.
I can't wait to see that too. I mean, like I said, you know, this is the success that they were able to have in year one of a complete rebuild. I mean, not a complete rebuild, but a completely new coaching staff, you know, a new offense, new defense. And you saw this type of result with the amount of money that they have. Imagine when they're going to have almost near unlimited resources when it comes to NFL standards and see what they're going to be able to provide. Like, they were bargain bin shopping. Like, they had to. That's the money that they had available. That ain't going to be the case going forward. So when they're going to be building 2.0, they're going to have a lot more things at their disposal to be able to provide the type of resources that Justin Herbert and this team needs.
And I think the thing is, too, is this whole kind of press conference to me happened with a little tongue-in-cheek smile where it's just, they know something we don't. Like, that's what it feels like. There's no internal strife. There's no question about which arrow which way the direction of this team is going is. Like, everyone there knows we're building something special. And if this is what we could do with version 1.0, imagine what we could do with version 2.0. And I'm glad you brought up the coaching, because that was another thing that Jim Harbaugh dropped as far as nuggets in this press conference, was that the coaching staff is going to remain the same, which I know a lot of fans say, okay, well, that means Greg Roman's coming back, which isn't a surprise or shouldn't be to anyone. But I think there's a lot of benefits in that too. And I think the other thing the Chargers have going for them is they have such a better sales pitch on how to bring people to LA this coming offseason than they did last year. And last year, they did a great job of it. So we're going to get into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel, because from big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. I know that it sucks that we can't root for the Chargers anymore, but one of my favorite parts about FanDuel is anytime touchdown scorers. So now I choose to root for, teams like the Lions, right, who haven't really done it ever and could go get it for the first time. But I also root against anyone who's going against, or root for anyone who's going against the Kansas City Chiefs. And you can get anytime touchdown scores in that game with Joe Mixon at plus 135 to get into the end zone, or Nico Collins at plus 185. But there's so much stuff to bet on with FanDuel, and that's what makes it so great, because it's not just who wins, but it's about anytime touchdown scores or over-unders, or even just the exact score of what the game will be. And if you guys want to get in on that, all you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. David, let's continue getting into all of the stuff that came out in Joe Hortiz and Jim Harbaugh's end of season press conference, because I thought there was a lot, even more than we'll be able to get into today. But yeah, I did think one of the more interesting things that was kind of just lackadaisically thrown in there is just that the coaching staff for the Chargers is going to be the same as it was last year, according to Jim Harbaugh, which could be better or worse, right? There's definitely more than one way to look at it. I think that a lot of people are going to see that and just immediately be like, okay, well, that means Greg Roman's coming back, which obviously isn't something that we thought was really going to be even up for a discussion after 1 year. But I think if you're trying to find the positive spin on that, David, you would just look at it and say, okay, well, there are worse things than Justin Herbert, only for the second time in his career, being able to get a more firm grasp on offense and go into a second season with an offensive coordinator. He had Joe Lombardi for 2 seasons. Every other year he's gone into a season in the NFL, and a lot of the years he was in college, he had a new offense to learn. That is one of the benefits. Also, keeping Jesse Minter, which is also part of that coaching staff, is great. But if you're looking for a positive spin, I think at least on the offensive side, it's, hey, at least Justin Herbert has some sort of continuity there. And obviously he just, as Jim Harbaugh said, had his best quarterback rating he's ever had.
Yes, that's great news. If you're looking for the positives, obviously I know Greg Roman's first stint as offensive coordinator back in the NFL was not a great success. Okay, it was not by really any metric. So
no,
but this is a great thing not only for Justin Herbert, who yes does not have to learn a new offense, but the rest of the players. I mean, offensive line, for example. Offensive line is a position that's very much about chemistry and about being together and about knowing what the person next to you is going to be doing. If you're able to continue that continuity, that's only going to improve that unit. And then the wide receivers, tight ends, everybody benefits from having the same offense that they can continue to drill, continue to ingrain in their brain. And then eventually you're going out there and you're not thinking, you're playing fast. And that is when you're able to have the most success. So this benefits Justin Herbert, but it benefits the entire offense as well.
It does. I mean, basically what they were saying about it, Jim Harbaugh and Joe Hortiz, was just that when you have that kind of continuity, it just helps everyone, because everyone who's coming back to this team already has such a jump start. And I think when you're talking about what you also gain from that is just such a kind of huge checkpoint already made in what this offensive playbook is. And I think when you don't have to teach an entirely new offense, an entire new playbook, it means you're starting ahead of where you were before, right? It means that you can start getting deeper into it, start adding more wrinkles, start doing a lot more. And I also would just say, hey, look, if we're going to say this is the worst supporting, cast that Justin Herbert's ever had, it's also the worst personnel that Greg Roman's going to have as an offensive coordinator. So I think that's another way you can possibly spin it too, or positively spin it. But I also think it's crazy to think of Jesse Minter and having all the dudes on that defense and all the young guys are coming back, like a Tarheeb Still and a Cam Hart and a Dayon Henley and a Derwin James. All of those guys having already kind of cut their teeth on what this defensive playbook is and how much better that unit could be, not only with guys having that continuity, but potentially even some more horses and adding some more talent to that side of the ball and getting a little bit younger there. So that's exciting. And just I think the other part of it, the benefit of the continuity is just the program in general, right?
Yeah.
Another full year in Ben Herbert's program, because in college, he had these dudes for 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
He doesn't get that necessarily in the NFL with everyone, but you have to think, especially since he wasn't even hired at this point last year, that all of the dudes getting a year-round Ben Herbert workouts and having the state-of-the-art facilities and getting to stay in that for an entire offseason and not having to kind of pick things up late, that's going to be
Couldn't
huge.
be anything but a positive. Yeah.
It can't, no. And I think that, everything is always tougher for a first-year regime. It's always part of the conversation. Part of the reason why, many didn't think the Chargers could do what they could this year, because it's always hard when you're changing up an entire coaching staff the way they did. And now you're keeping together, I think, what overall has been one of the more impressive coaching staffs, especially on the defensive side in the NFL. But
Definitely.
The other thing they have going for them going into 2025, David, to me, is just what the sales pitch is. And they were both asked about it, and they didn't say much about it. But what Joe Hortiz said was this is a destination. There's no doubt about it. And he's 100% right about that. And now when I was thinking and hearing him say that, I just thought, man, like, they got guys like a Puna Ford or a Christian Fulton or a J.K. Dobbins, right? All of these guys to buy into, hey, come here. We can rebuild your value and you can trust us even if you're going to decide to take a little bit less in 2024. We're going to make it up to you on the back end in 2025 because you're going to play so much better. Now look at what they have, right? Like, now the bolt's done. You have a state-of-the-art facility to sell people. Now you're not a 5-12 team coming off of, a horrible season where you lost the Raiders
double
63
digits,
to 21.
baby.
You're coming out, you're a playoff team, and you can sell that playoff vision because you should be better in 2025. So it's just crazy, David, how much of a better sales pitch now with the Chargers having the money that they have that they can present to these potential recruits.
Well, before they were selling a dream. Now they're selling a reality. That's the big difference here. I mean, they said, hey, come trust us. We're going to show you what. Now it's, hey, come over here because we're already winners and we want to continue to win and go get a championship. It's, hey, I have an 11-win team. I have a general manager and a coach that are proven winners and culture changers and people that have already been able to build value and bring success out. And, oh, by the way, we got a boatload of cash, baby. So come over here. And, hey, you also get the opportunity to play in L.A. in Southern California where, the fire's withstanding, and hopefully they get that under control very quickly. That's a temporary situation. It's a beautiful place to live. The weather is perfect. It's a great place to build a family and to work. You get to work in Southern California all year round. So you got the facility, you got the coaching staff, and you got the money all bringing you towards playing for the Chargers.
Yeah, and I just think it's crazy to just see the night and day difference of what that pitch is from last year to this year. And that's
major.
Why it's so exciting to kind of think about what this team can be and, who they could land. Also just surprised at how many of these players are just not going to choose to play in like a super cold place year round and just like that, how much of a factor that
I don't blame them.
But at the end of the day, the biggest stick that they're swinging around per se is the big giant checkbook that they have, which is why it's going to be so important and so exciting, right, to see what Joe Hortiz can do with that, because we saw what he could do when he was strapped with cash. And me and you talked about it before the show. It's easier to exceed expectations when you're signing a bunch of bargain bin guys, because with what the contracts they're signing are, very easy for them to outplay them.
Low risk. Yeah.
But Tom Telesco had some of those too and hit on some of those. What he couldn't hit on consistently were the big ticket items, and the big name free agents and the big contracts that he gave out always came to totally backfire and bite him, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what Joe Hortiz has now. He did good with the lower contracts, and you feel like he'll be able to do that again and sell that same vision in an even better one. But now he has to show us, hey, what are you going to do with this money? And also, who are you going to bring back? Because the Chargers have 27 impending unrestricted free agents. So we're going to talk about all of that and the game plan to building version 2.0 and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened for me, and I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions alone, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, I've definitely had this, and there's nothing more frustrating than seeing a charge like that you haven't used, for a subscription like in 3 months or even longer than that. I've had subscriptions I've had for like 8 months and had no idea I had them until I used Rocket Money. I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot I did that. But the best feeling is not paying for it anymore. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. David, we have more of this Jim Harbaugh and Joe Hortiz press conference to get into, but I do want to thank all of the everydayers out there, especially in the off season, for coming and checking out the only daily Chargers podcast that's going to be with you 5 days a week until June. So we're going to be here bringing you all of the Chargers content that you can handle, and we thank you for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen and want to keep up with everything around the NFL, make sure to check out the new slate at Locked On NFL, where they have 2 shows a day with Tyler the Madman Rowland and also my guy Tony Wiggins, bringing on the people who cover their teams every day on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast from. David, as the Chargers go to build this, as much as it's exciting, part of the reason the Chargers have so much money to spend is because they have so many players leaving this team. And we saw last year, having that much turnover is pretty rare in the NFL, at least to that extent, and having that many guys. And now this year you have some rookies who will be going into year 2, and you've kind of built some foundational players and found some in the draft that you aren't worried about leaving. But you have some big names headed into free agency. We talked about Khalil Mack, but it's also the J.K. Dobbins of the world. It's the Christian Fultons, whoever you want to name. There's a lot of guys on that list, but there was a huge excitement in this press conference where you have, Joe Harbaugh saying so much good to build on. A lot of excitement for me and Joe as we build version 2.0. But another kind of key thing they were saying is we want to re-sign everyone. We want to keep together as much of this group that we had in 2024 and run it back in 2025.
Yeah, he said he called this group special, and Harbaugh voiced some similar sentiments. This is from Daniel Popper of The Athletic, the fantastic beat writer for the Chargers.
Him and Eric Smith both did really, really good. If you don't have 45 minutes to listen to the entire press conference, make sure to check out Daniel Popper from The Athletic and Eric Smith, the Chargers team writer, because they both put together really, really good articles on it.
Yeah, they truly did. He said, I don't know if it's possible to get everybody back, Harbaugh said, but I want to come as darn close as possible to have darn near all of our players come back. And that is a huge undertaking, and also something that's not possible.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Nor would you want it, right?
No,
you don't,
and
you
it
shouldn't
shouldn't
want that either.
Right, because, that same team produced 11 wins and a first-round exit in the playoffs. So that's not a team that's going to get the job done. So could you want some of your core pieces back? Absolutely. And yeah, they're going to. They're going to re-sign several of these players, but they should not want to bring everybody back because they have to continue to build and improve. And that means new players coming in.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing is because of, what they were able to do when they were strapped for cash, you have a good kind of feeling that if some of these guys leave, that you'll be able to replace them and find guys that can be the next Christian Fulton or the next J.K. Dobbins or the next Poona Ford.
Oh, yeah.
That's the nice part of it. You feel like you can kind of, smooth over some of those gaps if you need to, but it's going to be such a balance, and Joe Hortiz talked about it, where it's like you want these guys to go get you more compensatory picks, because when you have 27 free agents, if those guys go start signing big deals elsewhere, you're going to get comp picks back for them. The problem is now you don't have those good players playing for your team. So it's finding that balance and also finding, how to, with that much money that they have to spend, not just canceling out all of your compensatory picks, because it also has to do, as much as it's about your guys going and signing elsewhere, it's about the contracts that you're giving out as well. But I think as far as, not wanting everyone back, or at least as far as not being able to bring anyone back, it was very interesting to hear what they said about Bradley Bozeman, because Jim Harbaugh straight up said, hey, we want guys like that back. Also brought up the fact that Bradley Bozeman played the most snaps of any Chargers offense player, maybe just any Chargers player in general this season, and they needed him, right? He came in at a desperate time at that position, and he's a great team guy. But it's also kind of if you're going to bring back everyone else, you're probably going to end with the same result. So as much as I'd be in favor of, hey, if you want to bring Bradley Bozeman back because of the voice that he has in that locker room and just, what a good team guy he is, that's fine. But it can't be the only option, right? You have to find other alternatives and ways to improve this roster. You can't improve, like, yeah, everyone theoretically could just get better from, year one with Jim Harbaugh to year two. But at the end of the day, you got to add more talent. And that starts with bringing in some outside players.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's definitely commendable what Bradley Bozeman was able to bring to the table. And I do feel like he did improve as the season went on. I feel like he was a little bit of a better player. But also, like, Bradley Bozeman at this point of his career, I think is a stopgap. I mean, it can't be, he can't be the only person that you have at that position or a Brendan Hymus, right? That can't be the room going forward. Like, you have to go in and look to add probably somebody either in free agency or in the draft that can step in and be an improvement in that avenue, because we saw how important Corey Linsley was, an all-pro center, and how he was able to make the pieces around him, the guards around him, better with his intelligence and his quality of play. That's something that the Chargers need to contend. Like, they need to go out there and then they need to seek that out again, and bringing in a player that can anchor the middle of their offensive line.
Yeah, and I think, Bradley Bozeman is what he is. And you kind of knew that, right? Like a guy that's, has the reputation of a very good run blocker, and I still thought was one of their better run blockers this season, but has obvious, liabilities and pass protections.
Yeah.
And I think that, especially everyone's numbers are going to look worse when you have Justin Herbert running around on two sprained ankles all year, and he's just not able to avoid the sacks that he could. But, like, that normally he could if he was healthy. But at the same time, like, it wasn't good enough. So, like, hey, if you want to improve both of your guard spots and you feel like Bradley Bozeman can be there while you groom a younger center to take over for him eventually, sure. But, like, it has to be a lot of improved talent in that room. You cannot just bank on these dudes just getting better year over year and think that's going to be enough to take this team and get them over the hump. But one of the guys that he did bring up in regards to just trying to bring everyone back was Rashawn Slater, and getting him re-signed because he is with the team in 2025 on his fifth-year option. But it is a little scary when you have a player that good that could have been re-signed last year or extended last year, but hasn't gotten that deal done yet. And obviously, you can kind of tell the conversations are ongoing because of how much they didn't say in regards to Rashawn Slater. Basically, it was this: yes, we're open to having those conversations, which is kind of a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah.
But David, it just brings to light, I think, one major storyline this offseason, which is just get Rashawn Slater's deal done as soon as possible. Metaphorically, write the blank check.
Absolutely. I mean, every single day that passes that Rashawn Slater does not sign an extension is more dollars being added to that contract. It's just going to get more and more expensive as the days go by.
As every other top tackle signs, right? It's not as every day, but it's like every other top of the line tackle that signs before him is going to get a little bit more until you have to pay him, and that price is going up.
And you know what Rashawn Slater is. Quite frankly, one of the best tackles in the National Football League. This is a no-brainer. This is easy. Go get the job. Go get the contract done. Sign him for a long, long time so that he is here to protect Justin Herbert for hopefully the entirety of both of their careers. This is easy. Go get it done. Set it and forget it. It's simple.
Yeah, and I mean, to his credit, right, did have the 2022 missing most of the season, getting hurt in week 3, trying to come back for the playoffs that year. But, like, outside of that, he's never had a season where he's missed more than one game. So there's nothing you need to see from Rashawn Slater. He should have probably won his second All-Pro this year, but, the top of the tackle, ladder is just about as talented as it gets, because there's some all-time greats that are still out there right now, still doing it.
He's going to earn a few in his career, no question about it.
No, I mean, he's right there with all of them, and arguably, maybe not even arguably, just had his best season ever. And, I think I saw Duke Manyweather, but that they thought he might miss his entire season because of a pec injury that he suffered very early on that ended up costing him only one game. The game against, I believe, the Chiefs, where neither him or Joe Alt played. So,
yeah,
it's just a no-brainer. You have 3 of the 5 offensive linemen in front of Justin Herbert right now that you don't really feel great about. Maybe take care of, the one dude you just have no questions about, and that is Rashawn Slater. Having him locked up, especially because you have another right tackle that's so cheap, relatively speaking, in Joe
Oh,
Alt,
yeah.
where it's like, hey, you can afford to have two great tackles, and you're really only going to have to pay one of them big money. And the other great thing is if you do re-sign Rashawn Slater right now, or extend him, I should say, you can mess around with what his $19 million cap hit is.
Yeah, it's going to
in
go down.
2025. So that number goes down, even more flexibility to do what you need to do to turn this team into a contender in 2025. And I mean, the vibe of that press conference, I think is fair to say, they know what's going on. They know what they're building. They believe it's special. And I think that the vibe kind of going into 2025, even with as bad as 2024 ended, is, hey, last year was good. It was, a step in the right direction. Year two is where we thrive. And that is like what Jim Harbaugh also said in this press conference, was just like, that is where I think the biggest gap is made in the franchises from year one to year two. And they just think that, hey, version 2.0, because of the faith that Jim Harbaugh has in Joe Hortiz, because of the faith that, and kind of the results of what they've already built, this is a team that you're not going to want to mess with in 2025. Because yes, you might have had a decent team with a great quarterback next year, but next year has a chance to be a great team with a great quarterback. And I think that's something all Chargers fans should be looking forward to. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for our Chargers mailbag, or also known as in the offseason Fan Mail Friday tomorrow. If you want to get in on that, hit us up at Locked On LAC on Twitter, or you can hit me and David up on there as well. Me at Dan Talk Sports and him at Dro Talk SD. Or you can hit us up on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, or call into the voicemail line and leave us a 30-second question at 323-524-7924. Excited to get into the first Fan Mail Friday of the offseason. We want to know what you guys want us to talk about, so make sure you guys get your questions in. And to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as find the show, like I said, in all of our social media, or wherever you can ask questions for that Fan Mail Friday show. So we'll be back with you guys tomorrow as the only daily Chargers podcast out there, your team every day. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.